Welcome everyone to this episode of Story Always, in which we have the great pleasure of having with us Steve Dee. Hi Steve, how are you doing?
Hey, very well, thank you.
So for those of you who don't know Steve, he's a multi-award winner game designer. He's the owner of Teen Star Games, through which he has published games such as Afraid of the Dark, Daughters of Exile, The Teen Star, and Baby Dragon Bedtime. He also provides a service of game design consultancy, and as a freelancer, he has worked in games such as Vampire the Requiem, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Grimm, Hillfolk, and many more. And today we're going to be talking about a new game that is going to be kickstarted next year,
Yep,
more or less the first quarter of next year,
yep.
called Relics. So to start with, why don't you tell us a little bit about Relics, kind of the quick pitch about the game, while I send people around your links.
Fantastic. So Relics is a game about angels who have come to Earth. God created the universe, but couldn't interact with it, so she sent her angels down to shape and create the Earth. They interacted with humans, and things quickly turned into chaos and bloodshed. So God forbade angels from interacting with humans anymore. There was a great rebellion against this, and some angels wanted to rule the world or destroy it. They became the demons, but were unable to interfere with the creation. A lot of angels decided that they would descend. So we have these fallen angels who aren't evil, but they are descending to live with the humans and interact with humanity as sort of strangers among them. And we use a very narrative system that uses the tarot cards, and we've got a unique flashback system that we think is very useful in illustrating these long-lived angelic beings.
I believe it is inspired or based on Las Vegas by James Wallace, right?
Fantastic. Yes. Yeah. It's basically a re-implementation of the
Mm.
fugue system by James Wallace that was used in Las Vegas. We actually looked at a few different systems early on about which ones we were going to use, and then I was looking at Las Vegas and realized it was really perfect for this. So Las Vegas is about people with amnesia who don't know their memories, but in film and TV, the same conceit is used for characters who have memories, but the audience doesn't know
Mm.
what those memories are. So it's the same sort of cinematic idea. Our angels have lived on Earth for hundreds, maybe thousands of years. They've accumulated an enormous amount of skills. So instead of having, like in standard RPGs, we have like 20 skills to choose from or something. Anytime you need a skill that you could potentially have, you have a flashback scene to when many, many years ago you learned that skill. And that allows you to build up a shared backstory with all the other characters as you go, and also discover new things about your character that you didn't know at the start of the game.
Mm. So, talking a little bit about the figure of the angels, they are a mythological figure, a religious figure, in some cases. What were the main sources of inspiration for your interpretation of the angels for this particular game?
I've tried to draw from lots of sources. That was
Mm.
important to me because I wanted people to go, well, thinking about angels is like this or like that,
Mhm.
and be able to find a way to represent that in the game. The ones that I usually point to are Wings of Desire, the
Mhm.
film by Wim Wenders, the angels in Constantine in both the comics and the film,
Mhm.
um, and the Prophecy series of films, and of course Kevin Smith's Dogma, which has some really great performances by Matt Damon and Ben Affleck
Mhm.
as the angels there. So those, and of course those all feed off each other because there are lots of those references in Dogma and vice versa. Um, yeah, so those were the sort of the main ones. But as I said, we've tried to be pretty open. So if someone says, "Well, this is how I see angels," there's quite a few different options for them to find that kind of psychology and that kind of representation of power and structure and that kind of thing.
Mm. And what did you find interesting about the figure of angels to be translated into a game?
Angels have always kind of fascinated me. I think because they are such really powerful mythological beings as representations of good and evil. I am very interested in philosophy and exploring ethics and things like that. And yeah, I think I was just wanted to do something in that area. I had Innomine. Many people remember the great Innomine game from about 20 years ago, French game originally, and I just wanted to have my own take on it and create my own universe from the ground up that had all the elements that I wanted in it. And yeah, I think partly also a lot of the religious games tend to, and a lot of the sources tend to make the demons the bad guys, and I think the angels are much more interesting. So I wanted to really keep the focus on them.
So in the game, if I believe that the angels have been cast down or have been abandoned in Earth. The gates of heaven have been closed. What does it mean for them to be disconnected, cast down in Earth? In what position does it leave the angels in the game, and so for the on the players in turn?
It's basically, I mean, that's the game is about asking questions, and there's a lot of mysteries into the system. So the angels originally have departed from God, and then as you say, the game begins with them discovering that the gates of heaven have been closed and God has gone, perhaps permanently, and left them alone. And the idea is then for them to explore what that means, and that was important for me because there's always a danger when you have the great, ineffable, all-knowing God that you can just default to he'll fix it or they'll fix it. The end of Dogma, for example, is about getting God back so that he can solve everything. It's a very easy Deus Ex Machina.
Deus Ex Machina,
yeah. So the idea was, let's leave the question up to the angels. If there is no God, if there is no connection to God, what is your holy mission? And I guess that's my question. It's why the game is able to deal with these ideas of philosophy and faith. What is the pursuit of good? What does it mean? What does it look like? And I want the players to ask themselves that questions. You know, if we are trying to create goodness and do good, what does that mean? So the book is actually designed to make the players ask the questions of themselves.
And I guess even if they're supposed to be angels, at the end they're very similar to kind of in a position similar to the existential human being for people like Sartre, of having been abandoned in Earth alone and with no other destiny than the one they forged for themselves, and how to come to terms with that, and what do they do in result. So how
absolutely.
It's
an existentialist, humanist kind of question. Is without meaning from outside, how do we find meaning for ourselves? Hellboy, of course, was another source on that with a mythological theme to it.
And how does the game help players ask those questions and try to answer them?
So we have a few different mechanics that sort of drive these questions. Partly, I mean, a lot of it just comes from the setting, because there are these questions, and there's a lot of things. The setting is designed to put a lot of pressure on the angels, because with God gone, all the ancient relics that were dormant have woken up and becoming active again. Demons are becoming extremely active. They have a lot of enormous threats pushing against them, both mortal and demonic. There are angels who are acting in ways you might consider evil. So there's an enormous amount of momentum. The Cold War has basically turned very hot, and there's no way to avoid these kind of decisions. You have to be we've designed the settings so that there's no way that you can sit out. And so you're going to have to constantly make a choice. We've also, in character generation, you have mortals that you've connected with over time. So they're going to get caught up into the mix, and you have to decide about what to do with them. And we also have 6 basic factions, which represent 6 different philosophies about your general opinion about what you should be doing. And they can be very varying and have a lot of conflict. The factions themselves have leaders that disagree on elements, but it gives your character an instant idea of what you think your purpose approximately is. The other thing that drives conflict is that because of the way the memory system works, angels, when you need a flashback, it's actually provided by some other player at the table about what you did. So you get the skill, but they get to describe the scene. And that means that they get to reflect on what you were doing and how they saw it. And we have a system that, like, generally the things that we remember most about our friends are not always the good times, but the bad times. So we have a system where you can generate, like, what was the emotion, or what was the reason that this memory is stuck in my brain. And it's because I thought you were doing something I disagreed with. So that drives people to sort of come to, okay, why did you do that thing? And then later on, of course, we have other flashbacks that may explain other points of view. But it keeps driving these players to keep asking these questions. You know, why were you seemingly hurting humans in this situation? I was like, well, because there was an issue of greater good, or you didn't understand, or I didn't understand. And that just keeps bubbling up these moral questions to the surface.
And the relationship among the players' characters, is there any kind of conceit to bring them together, or is just kind of incidental when they come together?
We don't have any like they aren't part of a team or anything like that, and we don't have a party sheet. But when you create characters, you are assumed that you all know each other, and you build your memories together. So after you've done your basics of character generation, everyone passes memories around the table, usually one to the left and one to the right, so that everyone ends up with a memory of at least 2 other players at the table, and that's where you get your beginning skills from. So before you even play your first game, you've got a history with these characters. So we played a game at PAX, for example, where we had a character who his backstory involved that he had been working in espionage, and so he decided that they developed a shared backstory where they were on 2 characters were on different sides of each other in the Cold War in the 1960s. And then we found out that one of them had been sent by the Russians to infiltrate America, and that's where he'd met this other angel. And then we discovered there was a political election going on at the time. So before we even had our first scene, we knew that these people had been together, they'd had this conflict, and that means that there's always an existing relationship. We've also made it so that the angels are quite rare. There's very, very few of them on Earth, and the general assumption is that you guys are maybe out of a dozen or so angels that live in your city. So you know everyone and everyone knows you. And that means whenever trouble happens, you have to get you guys together and figure out what's going on. You're the only people who can handle it.
And another element of the game are the relics. Could you tell us a little bit more about them? What role do they play in the game? What purpose do they serve?
Yep. So I wanted to have this. There's a lot of stories about powerful mythological objects. So the way relics work is that when angels originally fell from heaven, they found that their powers were shut off, so they couldn't just go to Earth and act like extremely powerful gods, and they were cast into these items that they called relics. And there was a loophole, however, where angels could destroy their physical essence and put an element of their spirit basically into the relic itself, and then it could be used by mortals. And this is why you have the echo of this is through all the myths about these sort of otherworldly creatures who give magical items to mortals. So there's stories of this, like Arthur getting the Excalibur from the Lady in the Lake, and stories like that. Even Moses getting the 10 Commandments from God. All these stories are about there's a spirit that gives an item to a human to use for good or for evil. So all those stories echo what actually happened with angels destroying themselves and going, here, use this item, and trying to direct humans towards that. The other, if you didn't do that, your relic was dormant until God closed the gates of heaven, and then the powers began waking up. All of this means that all the angelic powers that are in the game are all stored in an object, which forces the game to be about symbology and totem items, which again focuses on religion. It also makes it very dangerous because nobody's allowed to sort of be a superhero. If you have some power that can throw fireballs, it's in an object, and any other person can just take that object and use that power. Which means you are very dangerous, and there are lots of angels who go, well, you shouldn't be in charge of that. We need to put that in a safe somewhere. So even people on your own side are trying to take it from you. It could get stolen. You can also give it to other people and hope they'll do the right thing with it, which again comes back to this system of we want to explore, how angels make connections, how they trust people, and there's some element of having to bring humans into their existence and let them know what's going on and go, look here, what happens when you give the average human the ability to cast fireballs? You say, just do it for one thing, and then all of a sudden they decide, well, I have this magical, mystical power. Let's go with that. It also means we can do a lot of stories that I like about the Indiana Jones kind of element or the Tomb Raider element. So throughout history, there's all these ancient, great, powerful, angelic and demonic relics that have lied hidden and need to be found. Some of them are in museums. Some of them are still buried in the earth. And it's all about just who can find them and get control over them. So one of the ways you can play the campaign is you can be searching for an item. So the Constantine movie, for example, uses the Spear of Destiny. Turns up in Mexico and goes on this journey. That's perfect example of what you could do. You've got, of course, Holy Grail and Indiana Jones. All of these things can really be used to drive, if you want to have an investigation kind of mystery plot, you've got this ability to search for these powerful relics. We've got, at the moment, almost 50 relics fully detailed in the book, and where they are and how to find them. So that just generates a huge amount of plots for you as well.
And it allows you to talk about these issues of how do you handle power, how do you use it, how do you give it away, all those things. And there's also demons. You've talked a little bit about them, but what role do they play the game? What threat do they represent?
So demons, I guess, sort of represent the question about pure evil and how we react to that, but also you can explore the also elements of if there are angels that are acting evilly, what does that mean? So there's we've left it kind of open. So the general assumption is that demons are your main antagonist besides mortals. So they are on the move, they're collecting items, they are empowering humans, they're causing great chaos and suffering and need to be hunted down and fought and killed, and often are more powerful than you are. So that creates that great sense of danger. But if you want to play something like Good Omens, kind of that Terry Pratchett thing, where there's some demons who are a little bit on either side, there's an element of the Cold War that I mentioned. So you have that thing where there are angels and demons who prefer a sense of balance. So you've got them as protagonists, but if you want, you can have the option of the rogue agent occasionally to have some of those elements. And we've left it, it's against part of the mystery that we've sort of put into the game. There's a lot of secrets hidden in the last couple of chapters for the GMs only. So the angels might have a question like, are all demons evil? Are they pure evil? Can we redeem them? And the general sort of question for the GM then is how would you find that out? And that's the heart of the campaign. You don't just know these things. You have to figure it out. And the answers to those questions are what drives some of the adventures that you can do.
And I suppose it's another one of these things that put pressure on the characters to find these relics or find a solution to put it into action.
Exactly. Yeah. Finding out these answers to these questions, it can be really pressing. Yeah.
And you mentioned that there were different factions among angels as well that represented different philosophies. how is the relationship among angels usually? What kind of places can it go? How does the game explore that?
So yeah, the factions are designed so that they have an uneasy alliance. There are things that they agree upon, but they also have very key points of difference. For example, we have one group that believes that they shouldn't interact with humans or be as invisible as possible. But then we've got a group like the Helm of Justice. They believe the best way to make humanity good is to be in charge of as much as possible. So they want to be the powerful and the rich and make all the decisions. And every one of them is designed so they have reasons to disagree with all the others. And as I mentioned earlier, angels might be wanting to take control of your relics. They are definitely going to disagree with your philosophies, and you're going to have backstory with them that you're connected with. Not only can you do memories, of course, for other people in the table, you can say, "Oh, I have a backstory with this NPC," and so on. So the idea is that one of the themes of the game is that angels are like expatriates in another country. So the thing they have in common with other angels is that they are other angels. So there's always that, oh, this person at least understands me because they're a foreigner. But that's all we have in common. So I can talk to them because we have that in common, but they're not my friend. So that's sort of, we've gone for that sense of, yeah, you are only allies by the fact that you are outsiders.
Yeah, I get that feeling living in the UK as an Spaniard. That weird feeling of there are Spanish as well, and I guess that's something in common, but we really don't have anything in common per se, anything else. So it is a weird relationship. And another important element of the games is the relationship with mortals. You mentioned before that they had like a relationship with them. Can you tell us a little bit about how's the interaction of angels with mortals? What was the relationship, all of that?
Yep. It depends on their personal choices and their factions, but everyone at Character Generation has a current living mortal that they interact with for a variety of reasons. And that is basically an NPC that the GM can use to drive plot and action. And through the memory flashbacks, of course, we find out all the periods of history that angels have interacted. We also generate at Character Generation historical events that you've been involved with. So you have experience with mortals. We have one character in the game that came out of a playtest. She came down into ancient Egypt and was the person who caused the Egyptian Empire to suddenly become monotheistic. And that colored her view of humans. Like, she was trying to sort of go, look, there's just one God. And then all of a sudden they went, oh, if you know, then we will change our entire religion. So for that point on, for the next 6,000 years, she has this relationship of, I have to be very careful because I don't want to change their entire society like I did back in Egypt. So all that kind of history will color your point of view. We also have a system where, if you've seen the prophecy films, Gabriel has very few skills that he can do on Earth, so he has to get these corpses, these suicides, to drive him everywhere because he can't drive. And we've got elements of that where angels, even though they don't need to breathe or eat or anything, so they can just sort of be on Earth and pretend. And then all of a sudden they can't drive, they can't use a computer very well. They can maybe make a phone call, but they don't know how to use Google Maps. So a lot of the game is about either you have to have a memory for that, or the easier way is to find a human and ask them to help you. So that forces them to sort of interact and get involved in lives and find messy things. Another good film on this is the film He Never Died, which is about Cain. So he's not quite an angel, but he hates getting involved, and then all of a sudden he meets these two mortals. He has a daughter, and he has to suddenly forced to talk to people and go to cafes and deal with all this real world things. And so we've tried to have some of that element of driving you. All of a sudden, you have to care about humans. You have to talk to them and figure out what they want and what they like and why they do things.
So So one interesting element that you mentioned is the kind of that the game contains some content that is exclusive for the GM. That is kind
Yep.
of like secret. That is also something that I found very interesting about Las Vegas as well, which
Yep.
because it's uncommon in indie games. It's usually like
Yep.
everything. There's no secrets in the table. What role does that secret information play? How does it help? How does it help the GM run the game?
As I said, mystery is a big part of the game, and we
Mm-hmm.
took that from our Las Vegas, but we also took it from most angelic media, like the movies and stuff. There are secrets to find out. There
Mm-hmm.
is something that has changed or gone wrong or needs to be discovered. And we wanted things to be mysterious. We wanted people, as I said, to have these moral questions hanging over their heads. But we also want to give lots of supplies so the dealer can actually go, I know the answer to that. Oh, sorry, the dealer is what we call them,
Mm-hmm.
rather than the GM or DM, because they are dealing out the tarot cards. So they have, we've given them concrete answers so they can go, here's, and also it gives you like mysteries to solve if you can just drop these little hints um, and so that gives you a great source for designing adventures. It means you can keep mystery going on. You can build these amazing campaigns where you can reveal all this amazing amount of information. But we've also tried to provide some other alternatives as well, and some there's the main background that we've chosen, but here's a few other ways that it could also be true. So that even though if you play it through a great epic campaign and reveal all of one set of truths, there's still other truths to go on. There's lots of different mysteries. There are explanations for things like the undead and shapeshifters and things like that, so that any kind of sort of mystery has all these little layers to pull back.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess part of that's me wanting to give the GM as many resources as possible as well. I'm someone who likes pre-generated adventures. I like a game that gives me a lot of ideas and is really ready to run. So that's always been my focus. It's got lots of ways to generate plot. We're going to release some adventures with it, some pre-written adventures. But we've got, as I said, we've got almost 50 relics in the book, and you can just choose one randomly to get a plot. We're going to have some random plot hooks. We've got all these mysteries to explore. If you follow me on Twitter or on Facebook, every time I see something in the news that's about archaeology or something, I'm like, right, this is obviously a relics hook. And you can easily sort of start anything like that. You can go, okay, they found that ancient cheese or the sarcophagus juice. That's clearly this kind of relic, and these people will be looking for it. And off you go. And for me, mystery has to be part of that. To just give the GM like all the goodies to tantalize the players.
And how does that? What tools? I guess that's part of it. What tools does it have the GM to force the players or to help the players explore all these themes we talk about, all these themes of like humanity, good and evil, all that?
Beyond really this, like as I said, the character generation and the memories, we don't actually have any kind of real moral mechanics or anything like that. There's nothing like in some of the indie games where you would have a counter on these kind of things, or any sort of points that are spent on these. We've just found that by dealing with angels, and because of the way we deal with memory, things are just naturally heading towards moral questions all the time, and to dealing with philosophical quandaries, and yet not so much that you have to do that. It is a fairly open game. Like originally we did look at trying to towards one very singular experience, like some indie games are, where you start from, you know that you're going to have this kind of moral revelation. Your character will have, will eventually have a philosophical break. But looking at our Las Vegas, we just thought it's actually better to just keep things a little bit more simple and let the setting do the work. That's Las Vegas does that very well, because the fugue system means you don't always know who you are, which means you can reveal moral compromises about yourself. and the setting of a Las Vegas, drives people towards moral questions. So we've done the same sort of thing here. The setting forces you to confront moral issues. To some extent, they just naturally come out because of who you are and the nature of your existence. And the memory system means that you can never be sure whether you're pure white or pure dark, because anyone can edit your past, and you will find out as time goes on, maybe even very late in the campaign, that things that you believe about yourself aren't true. And that sense of identity drives morality.
And that makes complete sense. Like many people talk about this fruitful ball or whatever, of that you have to leave this empty space for the players to fill it out if you want them to kind of make actual moral decisions about something. Maybe like putting like a pool of points of illumination or whatever doesn't really make sense. So another aspect of the game is that we've talked about all this philosophical stuff, but also there's some like demon kicking, flaming swords, and all that. How does the game kind of handle that and makes it like exciting and interesting, or does it make it very gritty and dangerous? What's kind of the feel of that aspect of the game?
The feel, I keep coming back to movies. It was meant to be a very cinematic game, but it is still it's not always. That doesn't mean you're super powered. Angels are stronger and tougher than humans, but they tend to also, have a lot of odds stacked against them. Desperation was one of the things I was trying to evoke. So the angels can never quite rely on the fact that they're going to win every battle and every scene. And humans with enough machine guns or whatever explosions can wipe out angels. So they can never quite. They're not superhuman who can just ignore everybody else. But they also have incredible powers sometimes. We basically have a system developed into 3 different levels of power scope, and that determines the kind of miracles you can do and the kind of powers you can bring to bear and the kind of opposition you'll be facing and the kind of mythological elements you'll be dealing with. And you can sort of scale through those from 1 to 2 to 3 in an arc, or you can just pick one to start with. But at the base level, I always wanted to make sure that everyone had like the main suite of angel powers. Everyone has wings. Everyone has a sword, and we've basically given the flaming sword to one of the 4 aspects, which are another sort of class. But the others have also got their own very cool things. And everyone can show their own true form, which is this giant monstrous thing, and because there's no masquerade like in Vampire, there is an ability to sort of cut loose. You are an angel of God. Sometimes people need to be cut down, and we give players the tools to do that, and not have to worry about. We're not sort of cutting off hit points one by one. The tarot system is very broad. It's basically scene based, and that gives you a lot of room to just go, you've won this fight. Tell me what happens. Tell me how you take them apart. And if you get a significant edge, it can do even more cinematic things. And that allows you to. You don't have to worry too much about the roles accurately perfecting the tone. We basically, we sort of describe the tone to you as well as we can. We give you an idea of what success and failure looks like in all the major kind of tests you'll be doing. And then we say, here's a system that generates success and failure. And leave it to the dealer and the group to go, okay, we're being cinematic. That's what the kind of thing we want.
Talking about the cards, in the game you use tarot cards. I think in Las Vegas they use instead poker cards, normal cards. What do you decide to use? Tarot cards? Do you have any special meaning in the game?
Yeah, the tarot was a good fit. It fits with Alice Vegas really well. But also, if you look at the tarot, it's full of angelic symbolism. There is a card called Judgment, which
Mm,
has an angel on it. The world usually has angels on it. We use the tetramorph a lot in the game, which is the four elements of the angel:
mm,
the lion, the bull, the eagle, and the man. And if you look at the major arcana, those iconography appear all the time. So that there's also, of course, the devil is in the major arcana, so that's our critical failure. That one turns up, you know you failed, and that gives you instant connection. Um, People don't have to go, is that a failure? It's like, it's the devil. Um, and the four suits also correspond to the four aspects of the angels that I mentioned earlier.
mhm,
So that allows to have a little bit more of a thematic connection. Also, it's a physical item with a mythological resonance, which brings us back to the idea of relics again, that there are items that have significant religious and mythological power. So all of those reasons make it a really good tool.
mm. And also, looking at Las Vegas is like a more limited. I think it's like supposed to run for like 5 sessions
Yep.
exactly. How long is like a game of Relics can be? And how do you support maybe longer campaigns?
We've been aware of the fact that we don't want to make our games too long because we
Mm,
know that people these days. I actually saw there was a survey that they did back on, I think, for fourth edition of D&D, where they found that the average D&D campaign only goes for about 10 sessions,
mm,
usually less, and people only get up to about level 6. Um, so my thought is basically there are suggestions for running one-offs, but there's also we've basically gone through a theme of using threes. So we have a discussion of sort of a 3-act structure, and you can break down like one story into 3 parts, 3 sessions. We're basically aiming for, like, you probably wouldn't do more than about 9 sessions,
mm,
and that would assuming a fairly long story. We're going to be putting out a linked series of adventures that go, here's some level 1 adventures, some level 2, and some level 3 that take you up from the very basic sort of angels investigating a small everyday relic to this is something that is going to massively change the scope of the Earth. So focusing on that sort of 3-act structure, it's like, here's what it would look like as 1 game, here's what it looked like as 3 games, here's what it would look like as 6 or 9,
mhm,
and that sense of, and that's, so yeah, that's basically what we think of, and not to be ongoing.
mhm,
Because we're sort of taking our key from film, the idea is that there's a fairly fixed story to explore,
mhm.
not the ongoing serial of the D&D adventure where you just keep going until forever, basically. So, um, yeah, short and punchy.
um, so talking a little bit about the kind of the backstory of the game and the inspirations of the game.
Yep.
Angels as a they are not just mythological for many people, they are like actual part
Yes.
of their beliefs. So interested to see how do you handle the aspects to make them like interesting and something people can like think about and explore freely, but also like respectful to these people.
It's something that I went over, that I've gone over a lot, and we've developed really seriously. Obviously, we talk about a lot in the opening chapter about
Mm,
what our basic assumptions are and why we've made them, and what that means, where that comes from, where our cultural assumptions have come from.
mm,
And we've encouraged the dealer to talk to their players and go, look, you let me know if you have any no-go areas in this that you don't want to explore, because it is serious stuff. For example, we haven't done anything Western mythology, really. We've just focused on Judaism and Christianity and some of the Persian faith and Zoroastrianism.
mm,
We haven't gone around and saying, like, oh, the Aztec gods were definitely angels or anything like that, because that ends up feeling very reductive.
mm,
Um, the issue is, of course, yes, we do play still and with people's religion, as you say. That is very, and yeah, the basic thing we can do is just we put warning signals on it and just go, these are the kind of things we want to talk about. This is why we want to talk about it. And we want to talk about it because it matters, not just to make a cheap joke. And that's why I always thought it was important to bring the philosophical elements in. It's not just your superheroes. We are asking questions about what is the purpose of goodness and faith. What is the purpose of faith and religion and belief in finding good? And indeed, some of the angels factions are very much believers in human religion. Some have no time for it. And there's a great, question about that. And we've got some really excellent characters that people have made up and have gone into the setting who are believers in their own way. And, we've got Islamic and Christian figures. And yeah, I think I was raised as a Christian. I'm no longer one, but I think for me, I believe that I've treated the subject very respectfully, as much as I can.
And do you find, I think you just talked a little bit about it, but how has it been, like, the experience of people? Because even if, like, Judeo-Christian and Western religions or philosophies are predominant, like, very present in many role-playing games, they're usually, like, not so directly like something like angels from the Bible. How do you find people interact with those kind of things, especially people who have been raised around these kind of religions?
So far, everything's been positive. I haven't had anyone have any particular problems with it. But I haven't really presented to anyone of a very devout faith either. That's not true. I mean, no, my religious friends have certainly responded very positively to it as well.
Yeah.
And I think that's partly because, as I say, we bring these philosophical and religious questions to the fore, and we treat it seriously. So we haven't. The only problems, as I said, it was somebody was just calling me up on making sure I wasn't making angels the backstory for every other religion. That was the only issue that sort of. You can't just say that, the Aztec gods or the Greek gods or whatever, because that feels like you're just talking down to that religion. Whereas people within Christianity have been very much interested in it. So that's been very encouraging. People of all sorts of different backgrounds have been finding things that they want to talk about in the game.
Yeah, I can see that. Like, I think those kind of mythological or religious figures are, for many people, are such important features of their lives, even if they're not religious. That there's a lot of things attached to them that people may be interested about.
I mean, and that I think is the power of these kind of stories, is that people have grown up with the idea that these angels have been part of the structure of their entire culture. We have, the word angel means is used as a word for being good. We have the guardian angel. Being an angel means being a good person, and it sort of sits at the edge of our experience. We've seen statues and we know it's there, but we don't really think about it. So bringing it into the fore can be really important for people. Like, oh, that is the culture I grew up with. Hang on, I am in that. And for people who are drenched in it, I mean, you see it, like the prophecy films and Dogma, they're both about Catholicism in a huge way. And both of them end with the characters being very faithful and coming back to the church. And I think that's part of what angelic stories can do, is that they can make you think of faith in a different way. And then and in fact inspire more religious things in people.
That's really interesting. So talking about the design process of the game a little bit, how was it how was the original idea for the game, and how did you go about like for example choosing a Las Vegas and creating this kind of the game? How was the a little bit of the process of taking all these mythological figures and deciding
It's
how to
been
use them?
Yeah, it's been a long and complicated process with a lot of work. Um, the setting actually began way back about 15 years ago when I was reading Hellraiser comics, and I began sort of assembling some stuff about the way that I've forgotten his name. Garth Ennis writes about angels and Gabriel and Lucifer, and Mike Carey's Lucifer. So when those were coming out, that's when I sort of started first getting these ideas. Then in about 2008 or 9, I was working on Vampire the Requiem, somewhere around then, and I was like, it was very. I was thinking about how hard work it was for me to read all the vampire books to get up on the lore, and I thought this would be easier if I started working on my own setting. And that was when I began sort of figuring out how I would make something that was a bit like White Wolf, that had this huge arcane background and history and scope. It was late 2016 when I decided I could definitely make a game out of it. I was at PAX Oz and was meeting up with other people and going, okay, there's an audience. I think I've got a time and the place and the skills to do it now. But then we spent about 6 months looking at different systems. I originally was looking at generic systems like, do I do it with Savage Worlds? Do I do it with Cortex? Do I use Fudge? We looked at doing our own system. I talked to, there was the Shadow of the Demon Lord came out, which has a lot of really interesting things about demons and angels. And I was like, oh, maybe I can make this expansion for that, a standalone game using that system. And it was just, it's been a very interesting project. We had to change, the setting got turned and changed. If I went back and thought about all the work, it would just like, I don't think I'd ever have done it. But I'm now really happy about what we've got. It found its own voice after about a year of when we had the system and we had the setting, and you kind of build a role-playing game bit by bit. You put little things down, and eventually you find what it is you're making. You don't always. Sometimes, like a lot of the games I've done are smaller, and very much, and then I have a very clear idea very early on, and I just write to fit that form. And Relics has proved not to work at all. I've had to go back and scrap things over and over again, and I had to find its own nature as I explored it.
Was there any point in which you kind of like said, okay, now at least I have an idea of what I want to do. I know what to do next.
Yeah, it came by pieces. But yeah, it was. I think there was a point when there was a time when I had an idea for a new RPG. It was about 6 months ago or something, and I was like, "Oh, I realized that was because my mind had stopped trying to fix Relics. I knew what it was now, so my mind was off solving something else." But also the playtest that we ran last year at PAX in 2017, when people started just getting it really quickly and going, I know how this works. And just, instantly coming up with brilliant memories and brilliant backstories, and we had these incredible characters leaping off the page. That was when I was like, okay, yeah, this is working. They get it. With a little bit of explanation, we're getting exactly the kind of stories I want to tell. So everything since then has just been refining and perfecting, and hopefully getting it to the highest standard that we can.
And something I always like to ask is kind of, was there, if you could tell us a little about some problem or setback in terms of design or development or writing of the game, how did you approach it and how did you solve it, so we can learn a little bit about the experience of others?
Just made me think. I mean, there was the battle for the system was quite disheartening at times, because I was like, I'm definitely using this system, and they're like, no, that's not working. A lot of it is just turning the wheel. So we originally had a system where if you had a benefit, than the tarot cards. So the tarot cards had the minor arcana and the major arcana.
Mm.
And originally, if you had a memory that applied, the major arcanas would give you a success. If you had any sort of penalty, a major arcana would be a fail. But that meant when you didn't have either of those, you didn't get the major arcana didn't do anything.
Mm.
And so we found after lots of playtests that there were just lots of these things where people were going, no, again, draw again. The major arcana should be interesting in its own.
Mm.
So we went back and we changed that, and but we went back and forth all the way because the new system is slightly more. You have to think about it a little bit more, and it doesn't do some things better than others. But the key was just a lot of playtesting. I mean, that's really role-playing games. We don't think of like constantly running machines sometimes to check everything, or we think of playtesting as making sure that the sword works as well as the bow. But what for me, probably the best experience was watching other people GM it. I have a wonderful GM, Jake, who was willing to just GM it, and I could just sit there taking notes. And anytime something wasn't giving people the emotional encounter that I wanted, I'd go, okay, we have to fix that. And looking for what they call pinch points. Anytime it was slow or just like uninteresting, it's like, no, we need to fix that. So yeah, play test, watch other people play it, give it to other people. I mean, that's really the thing, is that until you can give it to someone else and go, does this make sense? What do you want to do with this? And watch it at a table as the cards come out. Yeah, that's where I sort of did the most of the work. I mean, there was lots of other conceptual things as well, making things more interesting, trying to make them as powerful as possible, give you lots of options. But most of the really things that have made it really better have just come from getting it on the table and watching people play it and going, and if it works, that's great. Do more of it. If it doesn't, you just put a little note next to it. Go, let's try it a slightly different way.
Cool. Yeah. I mean, definitely. I think playtesting I think that's kind of the constant among every, like, go to playtesting. That's really important.
Yeah.
And lastly, something I also like to ask is if you could tell us a short story of something that happened in one of your games, something cool that you think like could represent the game. Well, it doesn't have to be like the best super cool story, just whatever comes to mind.
Well, one thing I did like that popped into my head very early during the playtest last year is it was one of those just moments of people going, oh, we are angels, we've been here for a long time. A demon was getting away, and the angel had managed to get a gun through a very long story. It's like, right, I'm going to shoot this guy. I'm like, really? He's flying away. It's a long distance. He went, I'm a good shot. And then he thought for a second, and he went, I think I shot JFK. And someone else went, yep, I remember that. I was there. I was trying to stop you, but you were a crack shot from that bell tower. And it was just that moment of getting the mechanic into work. And then the next bit was like, we finished that scene. He shot the demon. It's like, and they were like, why did you shoot JFK? I'm like, well, we'll have to get to that. There was obviously a reason. And that's something also that I love, is that often you'll have these things where you establish that you did something, but you haven't established why. And that just leads to more questions. So that was just one moment where I went, yep. As soon as that guy said that, I was like, yeah, this is working. So, yeah.
Yeah, that sounds really cool. Yeah, it sounds like it really shows how the memories help the players then like ask questions of why the hell did my character shot JFK? So yeah, that's really cool. So for all the spectators, I'm going to leave the links. I've left the links of our Steve's stuff in the chat, and I leave everything in the description of the video once this goes to YouTube. So go check it out. If you go to the website, you can subscribe for like a mail list and even receive the playtest if you're interested in that. So be on the lookout for that. And if you
sign up to the list, you'll get all the first half of the rulebook that you can play, and you'll get updates to that all the way up to the playtest. So we want you out there testing, giving us feedback, finding little errors so that we can make it great. And of course, if you do that, you'll get your name in the book and our great thanks.
So yeah, well, thanks a lot, Steve, for being here with us today.
Thank you.
And thanks to the spectators. And if you like this, as well as like supporting Steve, you can, if you want to support the channel, you can follow me on here on Twitch, on YouTube. Give us a like. Support the channel monetarily if you want to with subscriptions, and generally follow us around, especially Twitter if you want to hear about the channel in English. Twitter is mainly in English for me, so yeah. And I hope to see you all soon. Thanks a lot, everyone. And until then, as I always say, live long and prosper. May the force be with you. And I'll see you next time. Bye.
See you.